Eric Bowlin, where are you at? Are you in Puerto Rico or Texas right now?
I am in Texas right now.
Texas. So you're up here in Boston, what, last week, 2 weeks ago before COVID-19 struck?
Yeah, it was like, oh geez, it was March. I left on the 13th, so 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, we were still concerned about the virus at that point. So usually your event has over 100 people, right? Like it's ridiculous when we get into Newton at the Multifamily Investor Network, uh, and it was like half the room there.
Yeah, it was like half, and this was right. That was Wednesday, what, the 11th, and Wednesday I think was the inflection point
Right.
where um, I'll just wait a minute.
Life is going on, huh?
Uh,
The kids are all at home.
Yeah, they were all outside up until we decided to do the call. Then they all decided to come inside all at the same time. All three of them,
Nice.
the
Yeah,
two
it's
kids
convenient.
and the third kid.
Nice.
Uh,
Congratulations.
so that's why we got the background noise. So, but anyway, yeah, I think it all fell apart that Wednesday. Was when it really went from people were concerned to it to the world ended, like
Yeah.
on Thursday.
Yeah, I
And
remember I had an event I was supposed to speak at on Monday, and the guy texted me on Saturday, my buddy Bill Roberts. He's like, "Yeah, no, we can't do this." So we had
yeah,
to cancel the event, and every
I had to
event
cancel
since
my
then.
event, which was 3 days later.
Right,
If I had planned the event the week prior, no big deal.
right.
So
Hindsight, man. Like there's so many events that have canceled, not just this month, but next month and the month after. Events that like my whole schedule is all messed up, all thrown off. And your event was one of the ones we were promoting, one of the ones we were looking to be at. So it's how we've seen how it's affected our business as speakers, right? As trainers, people who run events. How is it affecting? Do you think people in the real estate industry, like as far as investors go?
so far, at least for me, there's been no impact, but it's only been 2 weeks.
Right,
So we'll see how that plays out. I don't think that's going to really be that big of an issue for 6 months.
right.
I got a few tenants that are like waitresses and stuff that their paychecks just disappeared. And so we're gonna have a couple issues with them, and these are people that have been with us for a few years. So we'll probably work something out with them, just make it work. But I think the real issue is gonna be is if the economic impact is more longer term. Once unemployment starts to run out on people, that's when the real delinquency rate's gonna skyrocket.
You're absolutely right. So before we dive into the economy and where we're at right now, Eric Bowling, you've been in the game for a while. I think you've been in it longer than I have. You started running events way before I did. In fact, I remember going to your event in Worcester or Auburn. It was one of the first events I'd ever gone to, like
Oh, really?
locally. Yeah, yeah. And
Okay.
Darina, actually, who I just interviewed, she's the one who introduced me, and she said, "You got to come check this out."
Yeah, I remember that.
And yeah, there was maybe 20 people there, 18 people there.
Yeah, not very many back then. That was
But
what?
it
That was
was,
over 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. And it started very modestly. That meetup, just a networking event, free networking event that started like 15, 20 people. And then it grew. Now we're doing 100, 150 people a month before the virus.
yeah, pre-COVID.
Yeah, pre-COVID, right? Um, yeah, so yeah, okay.
So I remember when you spoke, you had 18 or 20 units. What are you at now? How did you start? Like, what got you into real estate investing in the first place?
Well, that's like four questions.
Right,
So
right. That's the interview. Go get it, bro.
let's see. How many do I have now? I got in Massachusetts like 45 units or so.
Nice.
I sold a couple properties last year, and then I'm a partner on two syndications, a general partner, and so that's like another 430 or 440 units. So I'm at like 480 or 490 total units.
Nice.
between the two portfolios.
So Massachusetts 45. Where's the other portfolio set up right now?
That's in Texas.
Nice. Is that why you moved to Texas, or you just happen to be in Texas and you decide to invest there?
I moved to Texas because of the weather.
Right.
'Cause
Good enough.
Do I need to even explain it to you? Like,
No, it's 40 degrees outside right now. I get it.
I don't know why I'm wearing a sweater, just because I feel comfortable. It's like 70 degrees outside. My AC was on yesterday.
Ah,
That's Texas. I was in Puerto Rico. I just got to Texas 2 days ago. I was in Puerto Rico on. I left Boston on the 13th. I was in Puerto Rico till Monday.
and so
2 days.
people understand you're not vacationing in Puerto Rico. You live in Puerto Rico.
Yeah, I live there majority of the time now.
No kidding. So you went from cold Massachusetts, investing in real estate here, and something you just snapped and you said, I'm going for warmer weather, but you didn't just stop at Texas. You just moved to Puerto Rico also.
Yeah, so the way it worked, and let's see, 2015, in Massachusetts, we got a 36-inch snowstorm in Worcester, and it was the biggest ever recorded in over 100 years of recording. It was the biggest ever recorded. And then I'm like, I'm going on vacation. This sucks. So I got in a car and I drove to Texas with the family. Got to Texas in January, and it tricked me because it was like 70 degrees the whole week here. And it's warmer in Texas, but it's not like 70 or 80 in January usually.
Right. Vegas is the same. It's like 60 during the day.
Yeah, it'll still freeze. It'll still like get cold here.
Yeah, midnight at 2 in the
But not
morning.
that week. So it tricked me. So I'm like, I'm moving. Screw this. And so a month later, I moved. I packed up my truck and I just got in it and I left.
Yep.
And that's how I got here. That's just the short story. And then Puerto Rico, just tax benefits, really. So it got me there. I flew there last year and just like, all right, this is okay. So I flew there again. I'm like, okay, this is good. And then I picked up an apartment. I went from hot Texas to tropical Puerto Rico.
No kidding. And so you're following the same advice that I subscribe to and Greg Cardone talks about all the time is you didn't go buy a place in Puerto Rico. You just rented a spot.
Yeah.
Own your investments and you're renting where you live.
Yeah. A home is not an investment. So if you buy a home, which is okay, I have nothing. I own this house right here.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with it, but I'm not buying it for an investment. You buy it because it's a place that like you want the family to be.
Right.
And so that's just kind of the approach I've always taken is that whatever you pay for, you're not banking on it going up in value. I don't care what the value of this place is. It's a town, it's a neighborhood that you want to be in. You don't want to be have a landlord be able to tell you you got to go. Like this is the house and it's not going to change. So that's the purpose.
Right. It's a luxury. It's an opportunity to make sure that you control a part of your life, a bigger part of your life.
Yeah, it's like owning your car or owning anything else. You own it because you want to own it, not because you think it's an asset. I mean, I guess in accounting, it's technically an asset offset by a liability, right, with the mortgage. But I'm not looking at it as an asset. It's just a place to live.
And you own enough assets to know the difference, right? You get the cash flow from an asset and from the house. Maybe it is a form of appreciation, right? You can make the appreciation play, but it's not bringing you that monthly.
Yeah, if it does, and I don't know if it will. I think it will in this particular town that I'm in, but it doesn't matter,
right?
Because this is the town that the kids will want to be raised in. I mean, they don't make that choice, but this is the town that they're going to be raised in.
This is the one they want to be raised in because this is the choice I made.
Yeah, well, school district crime and all those other things that come into those decisions. But yeah, this is where we decided. So that's what we got. We rented an apartment here for 2 or 3 years first.
Right.
Then we're like, all right, this is the place that we want to stay. And I mean, I don't want to stay here. I like traveling. I like doing stuff. But as far as kids go, this is a really great place to raise them.
Right. It gives you a local spot. Where are you in Texas? What spot are you?
I'm in Plano.
Plano, Texas. And so you actually had Kenny Wolf up here in Boston. You brought him from Plano as well, right? He's down there with you?
He lives in Plano. He was he was in HOA right next to me.
Yep.
He just moved to a bigger place. But he was, I mean, he lived a quarter mile away from me, and yeah, now he lives like a mile or two away.
No kidding. And so what is it? Plano is just building all these syndicators, right? Plano, Texas, this is where you go to incubate and start buying syndications, right?
No, I don't think so. I would hate to call it the syndication center with what's about to happen to syndications in the market.
Right.
Um, but no, there's a lot of very successful people on, especially on my side of the city. There's a lot of really high end type people. A lot of, I mean, there's so many headquarters for businesses. Like Boeing just moved here, Toyota's here, State Farm's here, Dr. Pepper Snapple's here. There's just so many major headquarters located within 2 or 3 miles of where I live that you get a lot of really high end type people living
Yep.
here. And, so of course, some percent of those high end people are going to be, high end real estate people as well,
Right.
way more than if you go pick some like random city. Like people tend to come because you got better schools. I want my kids to go to school with the kids of the whatever, mid-level or high-level executive over there. You know what I mean? Like that's where you
Right.
want. There's just a better opportunity. So that's why.
No, it makes sense. I get it. So you've got some really cool pins. In fact, that's why we're having this conversation now, is because like the text we were going back and forth with the other day, based on where we see the economy going, what's happening at the moment. This is March 25th, 2020, and stock market started tanking 2 weeks ago, just on this aggressive downward spiral. Everybody says nobody wants to drop the falling knife. Nobody wants to catch the falling knife, and it hasn't stopped falling.
Well, I went up yesterday.
Yeah, yesterday and today it seems to have this little. I've done okay the last 2 days, but I've been buying in pretty much every day for the last 2 weeks, just trying to find the new bottom and slowly putting funds in. But that's just for fun, right? It's fun money. It's nothing that's building my. It will build the empire, but where do you see? And I think today's Thursday, so we're gonna see tomorrow's Thursday. We're gonna see unemployment rate come out. We haven't seen it yet, but where do you see the opportunity showing up in this economy right now with COVID-19 terrifying, gripping the country in fear, our response being slower than China's? What effects are you seeing on it right now? We're talking about quantitative easing on a scale we've never seen before.
Yeah, well, we're not at the bottom. We're not near the bottom, and I think it's going to get a lot worse economically. I actually just published an article like 10 minutes before coming on here,
Yeah.
talking about the how fear is driving. Let me turn my cell phone off. How fear is driving the decision making process.
And how do people get to your blog? What is your blog link?
You can go to idealrei.com. So anyway, I've already been getting the hate mail from it.
Yeah.
So you go to idealrei.com and you can go check on the blog right there. And basically, what I'm discussing today is this concept where, and it's actually really difficult to break down the emotional response to what's going on, and then trying to look at things very, not stoically, but just without having an emotion-based response to it.
Right.
And I was having a debate with a friend earlier in the week where I was saying that I think that if you want to save lives, we need more restrictions on movement, and everybody needs to be locked down probably for 2 or 3 months. And he's like, I think everybody should just go back to life as normal, let the disease run its course, and that's just the way the world works.
Right.
And we started breaking it down, and I realized that the core argument is, who do you value more?
Right.
So he's saying, okay, if 2 million people could die in the United States, 318 million people are going to survive. We're going to destroy the world economy, like literally the entire planet's economy, in order to save those 2 million people. So he's like, do you value the 318 million people's livelihoods or the 2 million people's lives?
Right.
And
the question is, are we actually saving them too? I mean, we're still seeing the death toll rise regardless of all the actions we're taking.
Well, absolutely, and that was his argument as well. Was that the people who are being infected are generally old or sick already. I mean, everybody can get infected, but the ones who are dying are generally not, obviously not all of them, but overwhelmingly that's the number. So his argument was these people probably going to die anyway in the next few years. So it's a very morbid argument that he was making, but I'm like,
Certainly
okay,
is.
well, why don't we dive into this argument? Because as intellectual people, you should be able to entertain any concept, run through it all, look at the scenarios, and still at the end say, I don't agree with you.
Right.
But if you don't ever entertain their argument, then you're not being not intellectually honest. You're being dishonest with yourself, and you're having a belief without challenging your beliefs.
Right.
So it's like, all right, let's dive into this. Let's check it out. But ultimately, what I realized at the end of it was that the response wasn't necessarily who do you value more, but actually that we're basing all of our decisions on fear.
Right.
And then the fear is we're afraid that people are going to die, or we're afraid we're going to destroy the economy. Now, you're not actually making a rational decision to say, what do we prefer? And
exactly.
Fortunately, I'm not in a position to make that decision for anybody, but that's essentially a decision that the leaders in the country or in the world need to make.
Right.
Rather than doing a fear-based decision. Because what we're doing right now is we're actually going down a path, like you said, are we actually saving anybody? We're destroying the economy and possibly not saving anybody in the process.
Right.
And so that's the worst possible combination.
It's like you mentioned in our text was the message Trump's been putting out there is, hey, we can't make the cure be worse than the disease, right? And you mentioned that a couple times in the conversation, and it's a 100% real fact. You know, we dropped interest rates down to zero. That already is, you know, it's crazy. It's already, you know, a big step. The quantitative easing they're talking about putting in, they're talking about sending $4,000 or $5,000 per person. They're talking about going and putting billions into mortgage-backed securities, right, for on the commercial side, which absolutely it's going to give us more opportunity. It's going to stop the slowdown in purchasing, but it's also decreasing the value of the dollar. It's also falsely inflating prices on real estate.
Well, we don't know how it's going to react because the dollar value has been going up.
Right.
Because the whole world is impacted, the dollar is still seen as the safe place.
Right.
So no matter what they're doing, like people, this happened during the last recession. Everybody's like, the value is going to tank. There's going to be massive inflation. None of it ever happened. That's because the dollar is seen as the safe place.
Right.
So you think that's going to happen, but it might not. Like we don't know what's going to happen. It will in the long term create asset bubbles.
Of course. Which we've seen in real estate. It's entirely possible. It's perceivable to say that the amount of quantitative easing we saw last, you know, in 2008 is what caused our current real estate bubble, right? Our current not even real estate, think the stock market, right? That quantitative easing could be the cause of having the stock market go on for as long as it did and rise at the rate that it did. So it's, you know, we don't know. Like these levers are so big and they're so dispersed that, yeah, who knows what the future holds. But for the next 6 to 12 months, I think that's the most interesting conversation to have. And we can't tell we know what the next month holds. You know, the next month holds a lot of fear still.
Mm-hmm. Well, absolutely. And as far as, you know, as fear, it's going to be a lot worse if fear drives everything.
Right.
Actually, it's just funny because I just sent an email literally just discussing that, and I'm already getting email like, all right, I'm unsubscribing from your email list. Just got that. One person last email I sent said, I'm disgusting or something like that. And it's like, well, I don't know what to say to people. Like I'm literally just reading it right here. I don't know what to say to you. You can't, there's no answer. There's no response that makes everybody happy.
Right.
And so what happens is you just have fear driving everything. And so as far as what happens to the economy now, I think it depends on what direction we go.
Right.
And I've been holding my breath waiting. And right now lockdowns are getting more severe. And the hope is that it eradicates the disease, and it will eventually. The question is, can we all stay in our homes for 3 months?
Right.
Because that's about how long it took China in order to eliminate disease. They started back in January. I know this because we were sending masks and hand sanitizer to China because I got, My kid's mom is Chinese, so we're sending stuff to China for their family and stuff. And so I remember this all happening back in January, and now we're in March, so it's been 2 full months. They're just opening their economy back up now. So, and they had a head start because they had the disease and knew about it and didn't tell anybody for a very long time. So they had a huge head start over everybody.
Right.
The question is, can we do that, or does the economy collapse? And
Right.
there's a lot of I'm looking at a lot of data coming out, and every single day there's worse data than the last. Like it started, J.P. Morgan they expected GDP to drop by 14% next quarter, annualized. And then after J.P. Morgan was Goldman Sachs, I think, came out and said 24%.
Right.
And then the one of the Fed reserve people over in St. Louis said expect a 50%. Excuse me. Expect
silence.
Yeah, I was gonna put it on silent. I got distracted by the emails.
Yep. So we're watching GDP. I mean, these are just forecastings, but we know GDP is dropping. We know we're not producing anywhere near what we previously were. In fact, Boston isn't even building right now. Boston construction workers were sent home. They said, "Yep, we're not even going to build." Obviously, restaurants are closing, but they're saying anything non-essential, just shut it down. Just don't even send your employees to work. Keep them home. We saw Grant Cardone. I don't know if you saw this post, but he just let go 80 employees. He only has 180 people, and he let go of almost half his staff.
And threatened to sue them too.
And threatened to sue them. It was a real class act.
Yeah.
It's crazy because as real estate investors, a lot of us and entrepreneurs, right, we're behind Grant in a lot of moves. And I think this is just the beginning. I think he pulled the trigger way too fast, but he might have actually been. I think there's going to be a lot of people who wait longer. I know for me personally, I did it. I had an opportunity where market froze back in February last year. I had the team. It was getting huge. I had a lot of debt and a lot of expenses, employee payroll. And it took me 6 months to cut it. Like 6 months to say, you know what? It's not the position I want to be in. I think a lot of business owners are going to take that 3 month, 6 month track. And Grant just pulled the trigger fast. He just knew, right?
Well, I think Grant's business is very precarious right now because he invests all in overpriced A-class assets.
Yes, he does.
And those are the first thing to get hit in any recession.
Right.
Because the first thing people cut is their housing.
Absolutely.
They go from their $3,000 a month rental to a $1,400 a month rental 2 miles away.
A class goes to B class, B class goes to C class.
And so he's invested in a place that might go to 40 or 50% vacancy rate pretty much overnight.
Right. And
his entire real estate empire could collapse in 6 months or 9 months. So he's probably didn't react too fast. He probably made a lot of bad decisions. We'll see. Who knows? Maybe Grant Cardone won't be a household name in a year. So
right.
We don't know because that's what's going to happen in this new economy is a lot of the big players in the old economy, which is funny because that was the new economy for 10 years. Now that's the old economy. Things are going to change. And the people who over leveraged or bought the expensive assets and stuff like that may not make it. Other people will grow and take those places. But yeah, I mean, the GDP forecasts keep getting worse and worse. Based on the most recent ones, possibly up to 50% annualized GDP reduction, which is something like 13% for the year, because annualized is 4x for the quarter.
Yep.
And so just to put that into perspective, though, the worst single quarter of the Great Recession was an 8.4% quarterly loss. So we're talking 6 or 7x the single worst quarter of the last one. Now, the question is, how long does it last?
Right.
So if we just get punched in the face and then next quarter, life's back to normal, you'll see a huge rebound.
Right.
And yeah, it'll take some time to recover, but life will go back pretty fast. So that's one thing. Or does the massive hit, there's got to be a week link in the economy somewhere, does that cause that weak link to snap? And then that causes an unraveling somewhere. And that's what happened last time with the housing crisis,
Right.
caused, the mortgage-backed securities and all the derivatives on it to kind of go under, which caused like Lehman Brothers to go under. And it kind of exposed that weak link. And once that weak link broke, the economy essentially collapsed, and it took years to recover. So does that replicate this time? Or are we solid foundation enough that we can take that punch to the face, get back up? And we don't know the answer to that.
That's one of those questions that the longer fear is in the market, the more it erodes at the weaker links, right? Because that fear it's like an acid in the marketplace. It's sitting on everything, and the strong foundation is doing fine, but those weaker links are starting to get the rust spots. They're starting to get eroded at. And as the longer fear sits in, the more of those links will break, and the more likely they are to break. So it's just this, but with this much fear, with this much fear in the marketplace, it's becoming more prevalent. It's becoming more. Will it be housing? I don't think it'll be housing. Honestly, I think that all signs currently for multifamily housing anyway are looking good.
I think it depends on what type of multifamily you're in.
Yeah, I agree with you. A-class, again, always a terrifying market, right? The first things to drop are new construction, luxury, and condos. Those are typically the three most dangerous asset classes to be in the high market. And anybody building right now, all the builders, right? You're seeing all the builders. If you look at the builder reports that the Realtor Association puts out, builder confidence is down, right? And we'll see in a couple of weeks when the new report comes out. Builder confidence is what decides how many properties are being put up right now. Mm-hmm. And we're not seeing the suppliers putting out what they previously were.
Yeah, well, like last time they just stopped mid construction, just walked away, and that could happen. I think it depends also what type and what size multifamily you're in.
Right.
And you're gonna see a reduce in demand across the board because people do exactly what I'm doing, and they cut expenses.
Right.
They start cutting all of their expenses and everything that they don't necessarily need. They cut way back on everything, which reverberates. When people do that en masse, it has repercussions.
Right.
Like if everybody cuts 5% of their budget, like, that means people at Home Depot get laid off. Like, it's like one of those things, like, because I cut back on buying doorknobs and light bulbs and crap that I don't necessarily need,
right,
times a million people, and then all of a sudden nobody's buying them. You know what I mean? Like, and then so on and so forth. That has massive repercussions through the entire economy. If you see everybody pulling back, I think you're going to see people who might have bought a triple decker in Boston or a 10 family somewhere in the country. They might say, you want to know what? I'm going to wait 6 months or 9 months and see
waiting
what
for
happens.
the bottom, right? Waiting to see what happens, waiting for the bottom.
Well, it might be waiting for the bottom, or it might just be waiting to say, I don't know what's going to happen, and I'm not going to buy during uncertainty. I'm going to wait till things are more certain.
Right.
And they just withhold on purchases of anything. And so you will see that. But I think what will happen basically overnight is the large assets, the syndications, are going to basically dry up overnight.
Right.
Because those are getting funded by people who are putting $25,000, $50,000, $75,000 at a time, times 100 people, or times 50 people.
Yeah.
And that's how they were funding these. And as an investor myself, if I'm not going to buy my own assets, I'm not going to open up my wallet and write a $50,000 check to somebody else during a time of uncertainty either. So right. I think those large syndications are going to that market's going to dry up really rapidly.
Right.
So there will be an impact in multifamily. I just think it depends where and what kind of multifamily.
Yeah. And you're right. It's going to come from different directions. And it's going to be interesting because we've been running a very high leverage economy, myself included, right? It was just buy more, borrow, refinance, buy more, hard money, close the deal, but whatever it takes, just get in, high interest, doesn't matter. And like the music stopped, right? So my mentor, he has a saying, he says, life's like musical chairs. Real estate investing is musical chairs. When the music stops, make sure you have a chair. And he's like, honestly, be smart enough, carry the chair around. He's like, don't even just think you're going to be good enough to get out of the game. Like, just always carry your chair. You know, kids would make fun of you if you did that back in the day, and they'll make fun of you now for having that little nest egg. You're talking about, you know, saving money, selling some assets, and just having money in a cash position, which you've been fortunate enough to do the same. We just sealed some deals, closed off some condos, and like in the past, I would never brag about having money in the bank. I'd be like, you know, like I got to keep the money moving, keep moving, right? There's no sexier position than having cash in the bank right now.
Yeah, I sold 2 properties at the end of last year, and I've had so much cash laying around, and I'm like, what do I do with it? It's been like burning a hole in my pot. I've never had money like that in the bank ever.
Right.
But I sold them because I'm like, we're moving toward the top. Like I finally pulled the trigger and sold a couple, and I still have a lot of property, obviously. But it's like nobody could have predicted this virus, but I knew we were near the top, so I started deleveraging. And, you know, I did a bunch of refinances, got some cash out, still low leverage. I'm only at like 65% leverage across the board.
Nice.
On my personal portfolio, on anything that I'm signed on at least.
60 is considered the safe spot, right? From Gary Keller's Secrets of the, not Secrets, Millionaire Real Estate Investor. They say 60%. So you leverage, right?
Yeah, well, thing is, I was at 65%. I'm probably now at 85%, right?
Right.
Like,
Who
it's kind
knows?
of funny how that happens overnight. So, but that's why I'm not over leveraged. I still could sell the asset today at a lower than what it was worth yesterday, and still put money in my pocket. So it's a good place to be. Not that I need to sell, but It's a good, safe place to be. Yeah. So like, leverage is really important, but that's why I always preach about adding value, because if you go in at 90% leverage on something, if you can add 20% value or something like that, you're going to bring that loan value down,
right,
and be at a safer 70% or 75% or something like that.
Exactly. And that's where we want to be in any kind of purchase, right? This market, any other market, what we've just experienced, right, for the last 10, 15 years was a really easy real estate market. Not 15, but say the last 10 years, right? We've been buying, that's when you were buying most of yours. That's when I bought all of mine. And this next couple of months, you already said it. You're like, you know what, my properties are probably lower valued than what they were, right? We always track our net worth, and we look at it and we say, okay, you know, the company's worth $5 million. The company might be worth $4 million right now, right? It could be worth 3.5.
Might not be able to sell anything right now. It might have no value.
There may be literally no value because you may not be able to sell these properties. You may put it on the market and the market's locked, right? Like I know refinances are not going through right now. They're locked up. They're frozen. Because I'm working on one. And
the commercial markets are definitely in the process of freezing up.
Yes.
Right now. You could still do residential loans. Like if you need to sell something FHA,
right,
you could. But you know, other than that, I don't know if I'm a lender. You know, I've loaned money. I'm not a lender. I've loaned money, but I wouldn't make a loan right now.
Right.
Somebody called me. I'd be like, I give you a 60% LTV loan at 12%. I'd be like, not today.
I don't know if I want it yet. You know what? We're going to adjust our interest rates. You know, the Fed just dropped, but we still have to make money. And we're seeing mortgage lenders go way above what they normally would on the Fed rate. They're going 1% higher, 1.2% higher, just because they're still looking, the risk is there. So now they're saying, you know what? I don't care what the Fed says. We have to increase our interest rates right now to get a little bit more meat in the bone because we're taking on higher risk.
Absolutely. And there is risk. There's a lot of risk right now. And the risk is in uncertainty primarily. If you know where the market is going, there's no risk. If I know we're going to lose 10%, I'll just base all my decisions on losing 10%. And then I'll just take that number, drop underneath it, and still make the money. Thing is I don't know that that's what's going to happen.
Right.
You know, I don't know if the floor is going to fall out and it's going to go down 50% or if it's going to go down 10% or 25%. I've got no idea.
Right.
Nobody does. Especially when you have fear-driven economy, that you don't know what. See, and that's the thing. Like, go back to hoarding. Let's talk about hoarding, for example.
Nope.
And people in panic shopping. So when you get
toilet paper, right?
Well, toilet paper, right? Okay, so that's a great example.
Yep.
You're no longer making decisions based off of what I need. I got to make decisions based off of what I think other people are going to think that they need and that they're purchasing, and then I've got to be one step ahead of them to get it. It's a game theory.
Right.
You're no longer making decisions that are my optimal solution. I got to make my decisions based upon what your solutions are.
Right.
So that's what a fear-driven economy does. Is that's when I got to rush out and buy toilet paper, not because I need 2 months supply of toilet paper, because when I do need toilet paper, there won't be any there.
Right. That's now the new concern.
And that's the issue. So I'm no longer making decisions that optimize my life. I've got to take an extra $200 out of my bank account to buy crap that I don't want, just because I'll need it eventually, not today. And so what happens is that's actually really bad for a lot of people. That's I've got to change my most optimal behaviors and buy different things. So that's one. Two, some people can't afford to do that.
Right.
And so the people who actually can't afford more than a week's worth of baby wipes at a time, like, have no baby wipes for their kids or whatever. And so by me, and not just me, but like, I mean that like any behavior that I have or do has a repercussion to everybody else's behaviors. And so those people suffer.
Right.
A lot. And so you increase the level of suffering across an economy with fear-driven behavior. And so what's happening is that will happen in real estate. That's happening in the stock market. I mean, just look, we had the worst single day in stock market history, followed by, since like 1930, followed by the best single day since 1930, like 2 days later.
Right.
That's not a market. That's a market based off of euphoria and fear back to back.
Right.
That's just not like, how can the market swing?
To see resistance and support so far away from each other it's just a sign of the times. We're super emotional right now. Everybody's extremely emotional, and I don't know if this is just fear alone or if quarantining people actually increases their emotions, right? If like distracting them, like work as a distraction allows people to be a little more balanced. Taking work away from people and then putting people in homes with their families that they're just not used to seeing this often, right? You got the kids running around back there, and your wife's home now, right?
Interviews, because I got kids on the other side of the door banging on it.
Right.
Like, I've had to cancel all my podcast interviews. I've had to cancel like 5.
Right. You're well equipped, right? You're emotionally, mentally stable, and you're used to your family. You love your family, right? There are some people who just are not used to seeing their kids, right?
I'm getting a lot of messages from people, not any, it's not a group of people that I'm really tapped into, but I've got some women that I know that are really tapped into like the abuse support networks and stuff like that. And they're telling me that domestic abuse right now is skyrocketing because you got to have a bunch of people who would normally be very distant and separated.
Yep.
In abusive relationships now trapped together. Like, that's a side effect nobody probably would have predicted.
Did not see it, did not foresee it. But I was sitting in the cigar shop the other day, and one of the higher ranking police officers said it to us: domestic calls are way up.
Way up.
Domestic calls are.
Sorry, can I swear on this?
Go ahead, yeah. It's my audience, bro. We don't give a shit.
People are beating the shit out of each other right now. Like, it's because I'm getting so many text messages from people who it's overwhelming to me, because people look to me to be level-headed,
right,
and say, like, just be emotionless with my responses. And I'm like, look, when everybody is texting me, like, it affects me too, like, because there's so much anxiety right now. People don't know what's happening, and it makes it worse because they can't work, like you said.
Right.
They're stuck at home. Some people are just alone. Like, I can't imagine that. As much as your kids annoy you, I can't imagine being totally isolated.
It's not that bad. I'll be honest. It's actually been pretty peaceful.
For a couple days, but like 2, 3, 4 weeks of it.
No, I got one of my friends. She's actually flying in a couple of hours. I gotta go pick her up from Boston. She's
better keep her 6 feet away.
Right? Yeah. Well, I told her, I was like, look, we're about to get quarantined. Like, come on, we're gonna build a business for the next 2 weeks.
No, it's it's just intense, and the isolation exacerbates the emotional. There's going to be a lot of people coming out of this on antidepressants and anti-anxiety meds.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that much.
I think that we're talking about it, and the guys I talk with are like you, right? Very intelligent. They're paying attention to details. They're looking at the bigger picture. And then now we're looking at the psychological side of it. Is not only do we have a time where the financial markets look terrifying, right? You look at the charts; they're absolutely scary. And when people are already prone to fear, right? They're already eating it all up, and then you quarantine them. You put them in either isolation when people are not used to spending time with. You know, the bars are all closed, so the guys and the girls who are used to, right? it's a hell of a soup, bro. It's crazy on crazy, and now they're forced with dealing with their emotions, with also social distancing. They're not used to, maybe they're used to communicating things out, and they're not able to do that now. And I think it's going to compound. I really do think that isolating people during a time of fear is, unless everybody starts really getting into meditation and like Zen and doing yoga at their house, I think we're in for some really interesting stuff coming up. There will be suicide, and I hate to say it, but I don't want to perpetuate anything like that. And I think that anybody who's considering it really needs to think like, look, this is temporary as shit. Like, it gets way better than this. But there will be people who are, you know, terrified doing some really dumb things, like making some really dumb decisions.
Well, for sure. And if you think about a person who's already got mental health issues, and you're putting them into an environment that with a lot of anxiety, fear, and then isolating them so they can't get the emotional support that they might need,
right?
You know, you're really setting people up for a lot of other problems. And so, I mean, these are all, you know, what you call second and third order effects,
right,
of the main thing. And it's impossible to predict these numbers. It's like I was joking with somebody, semi-joking, is serious though, is like, what number of people are not going to die from communicable diseases because we've all isolated ourselves? So like, yeah, people die from this one, but how many flu deaths have we saved?
Right.
As a side effect, and we don't know that number. It's impossible to know that number, but you know, that's a positive secondary effect.
Right.
We're talking all negative secondary effects, but there are some positive ones as well.
And again, the other side, you're getting more time. Like for me personally, you know, I love this alone time right now where I'm, you know, working on the next book. I'm working on a training course, doing things that I can never do. Well, I just put on the back burner, and spending really, a lot of people are spending time with their families, you know, like getting back to the basics, seeing what's really important. Me personally, I don't go for walks often, right? But Dorina was down the other day. I went for a walk on the waterfront, and you know, I had another friend of mine. We've been doing business meetings out like walking now, which we never would typically do. It's, hey, let's, you know, meet up at a restaurant and eat and drink. Now it's like, hey, let's go for a walk and talk business.
Oh yeah, well, and that's like, I was joking when I was in Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico's got a more severe lockdown. Walking is not allowed.
Oh, no.
Yeah, exercise is banned in Puerto Rico right now. They obviously don't follow the CDC guidelines. I just kind of make it up as they go along.
Right.
And,
Puerto Rico's good in all the other respects. Right? They got tropical weather. Good tax code.
Yeah, I mean, the disease might not spread as well there. It's one of those regions that it doesn't seem to be spreading, but you know, you never know. But yeah, it's like, I was joking with somebody. I'm like, how does dating work in the era of COVID? Like, would you meet at the grocery store? Because that's still illegal. Like, you could still go to the grocery store.
Tinder, bro. Tinder.
But how do you go meet the person? Like,
right.
how does it, like, you're supposed to meet people in public. So like, you can't go walking together really. So you can go jogging together, go to the grocery store, like go to the pharmacy together. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just,
let's go get some takeout and take it out.
Yeah, and eat it while you walk. Like, I don't know. It's just one of those secondary effects that pop into your head randomly. You're like, oh, I wonder how that works right now.
Right. Well, I'll tell you exactly how it works. So this weekend, I had a date going, and we went for a walk, obviously, went grab some food, and had no place to eat it. So I was like, hey, let's go back to my place. So it's actually working out really well for people who know how to bounce back to their place. But at the same time, it is making it a little more difficult, because I typically would not do that on a first date, right? So now that we've gotten personal here.
Well, yeah, no, and well, that's the thing. Is I was actually talking to one of my friends yesterday. It's like, so you got to meet at people's houses. Like, what are the secondary effects of that? Like, serial killers are loving it right now,
right?
You know, or serial rapists, they're loving it right now.
Yeah, this is their scene. Like, hey, you know what? We got nowhere to go. Let's do this back alley over here. This is great.
Yeah,
actually, we don't want to encourage any of this.
No, of course not, and it's not funny. But it's like, these are all things that are the the reality that we're living in right now. We're just
Right.
like randomly just picking stuff. And these are all things that like, you got to think, depending on how long the social distancing or lockdowns, quarantines all stay
Right.
in effect, how much does this impact our society?
Right.
So what if you can't go to the restaurant for 6 months? Say. What if all the restaurants close for 6 months? What do you do in month 7? Do we just go right back out to the restaurants? Or
Right.
are you like, I found an alternate way that's healthier to do business?
Exactly. I started eating from home. I started doing my own nutrition. To that point, what about the school systems, right? The school systems for decades, for centuries, have built big, expensive universities. We're building one in Fall right now. I think it's $10 million school or $50 million school. And right now, all the students, because I'm a friend of some of the
Mhm.
teachers, they're telling me, yeah, we're building plans so we can teach kids from home. And it's almost like, why do we have the school in the first place? If we can teach them from home, then that's probably the better solution,
Is it?
right? Like it's
School's also daycare, don't forget.
schools a daycare, and that was the point that we were coming to, is that schools become babysitting. Feed them, you keep an eye on them for a little while, but not educate them. It's not their priority. Their priority is, like, people's concerns as parents is, hey, who's going to take care of my kid?
Well, they gotta
That's
work.
what schools become.
Well, a lot of school is, and I was actually talking to a person that I know that right before the outbreak, she was talking about getting a job doing private teaching for a wealthy family that she knew because the school shut down.
Right.
So the school had shut down, but the quarantine orders hadn't gone into effect yet. And she's like, well, I could just teach this kid for 8 hours a day. I'm like, whoa, 8 hours a day? I'm like, that's not how much actual education they get in first
Right.
grade or whatever the age is. I'm like, I know, because I got a kid in first grade. They probably get like 3 hours of education, and the other 5 hours is playing
Playtime.
and interaction and stuff like that. And I'm like, if they hire you, like you're not, if you're being a teacher, not a babysitter, you should go for like 3-4 hours.
Do your
And
tutoring, get in, get out.
get your educational portion done, and then let the parents play with the child. This is, that was kind of my take on it. And it's school is exactly that. It's 8 hours long because that's how long people work for.
That's right. That's absolutely right. And I agree with you. Some of the events that you do, right? 2 weekends in 1 weekend, in 2 days, you're educating people more than they're going to take in a whole year, right? Than they could take in a series of books. And you don't need 8 hours a day. I mean, you do it 8 hours for 2 days, but you can give them all of that education, all that information, right? Kids are the same way. We don't need to be in school for 8 hours, right? In 8 hours, you're just trying to stay awake, right?
Realistically, if you had an event, you would teach people more if you could do 2 hours a day all week.
Right.
And even though it's only 10 hours of education, it would be more impactful than 16 hours on a weekend.
Absolutely.
But you can't get people to give you 2 hours a day for a week.
No, you can't even get them to do 30 minutes a week on a consistent podcast for 52 weeks, right? Like it's almost better to just hit them with it as much as you can in a shorter period of time. But what I'm getting at is, are we going to come out of this saying, why do we have campuses anymore? Why do we have school grounds anymore? Is school like just, is it even being done right? Like, can we teach them in 3 hours and have just a playground or something set up entirely differently, like, but just an awareness of where we're going with everything.
On that specific thing, I think that this whole thing will make people realize, or make people reprioritize things in their life.
Right.
And so I think that people realize more what's important and what's not important,
right,
during tough times. But I don't think school will specifically change because of the babysitter aspect.
right.
I think parents who teach at home, homeschool or private school, parents that do a lot of private school, recognize it more for that
Right.
than people who go to public school. Because a lot of people have already said, I don't like public school. I don't like the way it works. And these are the reasons why. And I'm going to go solve it by going over here. So I think a lot of people already see that.
Right.
So that, that's an interesting email. Sorry, I got distracted by an email. Matt Paceni emailed me. Um, I'm not sure public schools will change very much because the majority of people need public schools to be,
Do
you
what
know,
they are.
be what they are. So I
Right.
don't think that'll change, but I do think people will reprioritize a lot of things.
Yep.
Uh, what is important, what's not important, and like I was talking to my sister, who is a school psychologist who helps allocate resources to children who are special needs, and I was talking to her. She's like, "Well, I think my job's pretty safe," and I'm like, "Are you sure?"
Right.
I'm like, I'm like, okay. She's like, well, it's federally funded, et cetera, and it's necessary. It's the law. It's required. I'm like, yes, but if there was a depression, just say, and we went through 5 years of problems like this, I'm like, do people, when they decide who really needs the education and who needs the dollars, when there's a limited amount of dollars, I'm like, are you sure your job is secure?
Right.
Because we know the majority of school funding goes to a very small percentage of people who need a lot of help, and they take up a large portion of the budget. I'm like, are you sure that's safe? Are you sure that won't be chopped out? And they might say, you know what, those 5% of kids, sorry kids. Like, I'm like, are you sure that's not going to happen? I'm not saying it should happen, but are you so confident that's where our priorities are?
And that brings us to the biggest lever that could be played is law, right? So during an economic crisis like this, because it's a crisis, right? Recession, whatever this is, change or correction, when lawmakers make changes that are more permanent than the issue itself, right? So we don't know what's going to come out, what bubble is going to happen, or where things are going to shift.
Mm-hmm.
But as they're making laws, they're going to have much longer term effects, and it's just so I guess there's a lot of variables right now, and I want to close this out, but what I like to leave on is three tips. What are three tips? You've been investing, you've been in the stock market, you've been blogging, you've been just as a coach, a trainer. You're doing a lot of things in life. You've got a lot of experience, and you're really keeping an eye on the market and what's going on. But life experience, like if you go back to young Eric Bowling and be like, hey, these are the three things that I would suggest you do. What advice would you leave for yourself? What advice would you leave for young investors looking to get to where you're at?
Okay. Well, the first thing, one that worked for me during the last recession, was dollar cost averaging. Really important. It's essentially what you were talking about without saying it at the beginning with the way that you're investing in the stock market.
Right.
You're putting a little bit in. I wouldn't necessarily say put it in each day, but I would say that if you buy in a little bit more every time the market drops about 10%,
Right.
you're going to get pretty close to the bottom. And what happens is it brings your average position, the average cost of that position, way down.
Right.
So it only takes a very small uptick to recover all your losses. And like you could just think about it. The market was down like 30%. If you had bought it at, I started at negative 20%, and then if you've done another 10%, 30% down, when the market goes up just the 11% it went up yesterday, you would have already recovered all of the losses. You'd be even now with
Right.
11% uptick, even though it's 30% down or 20% down or whatever. So that's how dollar cost averaging works, and you can apply that to stock market. You can apply that to real estate. Apply that to real estate market.
Yep.
Any market you can really apply that to. It's really important to not let fear drive your decisions, and to take that. So that's the most important tip that I would say is allocate as much money to investing as you can afford to lose,
Right.
and not be afraid to keep buying as it goes down. That's one. Two, cash heavy, and especially until you know where we're going.
Right.
So we're going to, over the next few weeks or a month, get a better direction on what's going to happen. So for the next month, I'm stockpiling everything that I as far as cash goes,
Yep.
and making sure that all of my expenses that I don't need to spend are all being cut.
Yep.
And that could mean some tough decisions, like getting rid of my nice beachfront apartment and getting a $400 apartment somewhere in a less nice part of San Juan.
Right.
That might mean getting rid of, I have one owned car, one leased car. We might get rid of the leased car, just go down to one.
Yep.
I can afford all of these things, but the question is, do I need to afford these things?
Right. How much more opportunity do you get by having that cash in your pocket?
feeling this safety of, instead of I can cut $3, $4, $5,000 a month in expenses, then I'm going to.
Right.
Because I don't know where the economy's going right now. And I can always choose to go get a new car. I could always choose to get a nicer apartment later. If
Yep.
I'm totally wrong on where we're going, I can always upgrade again. But pulling Grant Cardone and downgrading as fast as possible. And I'm not saying you should lay off all your employees or whatever. And I don't have employees. I got rid of them. I got rid of that years ago.
I did too. Yep.
But we're cutting back on maintenance expenses.
Yep.
Things that can be deferred are being deferred.
Yep.
So anyway, that's the second thing. And the third thing I would say, try to identify where fear is controlling your decision making and eliminate that fear and make rational decisions.
Absolutely. Those are some really good tips, Eric. How can people find out more about you? I know you mentioned the blog earlier. What's the easiest way to get in contact with you and learn more from you and keep just feeding and staying in your funnel? Find out about your next events coming up.
Yeah, the best way is to go to idealrei.com, and right at the top of the page there you can put your email address in. You'll get an automatic email from me, and if you want to contact me, the best way is just to reply to that. They all come straight to my email box. So that's the best way to do it.
Awesome. Brother, I appreciate you. We're going to keep doing this. Ladies and gentlemen, Eric Bowlin, when you have a choice, always work with the best.
Yeah.
Cheers,
right,
brother.
Take it easy.